Daniel stayed behind a thick tree trunk and watched the unconscious woman for 5 full minutes. His tactical training was screaming at him that this was a trap. Everything about this situation was wrong. The restraints on her wrists were military grade and designed to hold someone with enhanced strength. Her equipment was too advanced. Her appearance was too convenient. After 20 years of nothing, suddenly there was another human exactly when his sensors could detect them. But his training was also telling him that she was dying. The blood from her head wound was flowing steadily and her breathing was getting shallower. If this was a trap, then whoever said it was using real bait, and that bait would be dead soon if he did nothing. Daniel made his decision. He activated his armor's combat mode and approached the tree with his rifle ready. His sensors swept the area, constantly looking for hidden enemies, but detected nothing except local wildlife. He reached the woman and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see more details. She was young, maybe in her early 30s. She had short, dark hair and an athletic build. Her left arm had tattoos that looked like star maps. On her chest, her name tag read, Morrison K. Lieutenant. Below that were more patches with symbols Daniel did not recognize. Frontier Exploration Corps, 7th Scout Division. None of these organizations existed when Daniel's colony had launched from Earth. He checked her for weapons and found a pistol and 2 knives which he removed carefully. Then he examined her restraints. They were coded locks that required either a key or a hack to open. Daniel pulled out his multi-tool and began working on the electronic lock. It took him 3 minutes to bypass the security and release the restraints. The moment her hands were free, he caught her before she fell forward. She weighed less than he expected. Daniel quickly scanned her for other injuries. Besides the head wound, she had bruising on her ribs and arms that looked like she had been in a fight. He needed to get her back to his compound where he had medical supplies. But carrying an unconscious person 3 kilometers through dangerous territory was not going to be easy. Daniel adjusted his pack and lifted her onto his shoulders in a rescue carry. Then he began the long walk back. The journey was exhausting. Daniel was strong from 20 years of survival, but he was also 54 years old and carrying a full-grown woman across rough terrain. He stopped twice to rest, and each time he checked her pulse and breathing. She was stable but still unconscious. His sensors remained quiet except for normal animal activity. Whoever had left her at the tree was not following him. That bothered Daniel more than if they had attacked. It meant they were confident enough to let him find her. It meant they wanted him to take her. By the time Daniel reached his compound, the sun was setting and his muscles were burning. He carried her through the airlock and straight to his medical room. This room had been a clinic when the colony was alive, and Daniel had kept most of the equipment functional over the years. He laid her on the medical bed and began treating her wounds. The head wound was not as bad as it looked. Head wounds always bled a lot, even when they were shallow. Daniel cleaned it and sealed it with medical adhesive. Then he treated her bruises and checked for broken bones. Nothing was broken, but she had clearly been beaten. He started an IV to get fluids into her system and attached a monitor to track her vitals. Then he stepped back and looked at her lying there on his medical bed. The first other human he had seen in 20 years. Daniel felt emotions he had forgotten existed. Relief that he was not alone anymore. Fear that this was somehow a dream. Confusion about how any of this was possible. And underneath all of it, a deep, exhausting loneliness that suddenly felt 1,000 times heavier, now that he knew it might end. He left her in the medical room and went to review her equipment. Her flight suit was made from materials Daniel had never seen. Lightweight but incredibly strong. Her pistol used energy cells that looked decades ahead of his colony's technology. Her helmet had a heads-up display system that was far more advanced than his. Everything about her gear suggested she came from a future that had left Daniel's time behind. He found a datapad in one of her pockets and tried to access it, but it was locked with encryption he could not break. Daniel set the pad aside and went to check his compound's defenses. If whoever left her at that tree decided to come looking for her, he wanted to be ready. He activated all his perimeter sensors and armed his automated turrets. Then he made a simple meal and ate it while watching the monitor that showed the medical room. The woman still had not moved. 6 hours after he brought her to the compound, the woman finally woke up. Daniel saw her stir on the monitor and immediately went to the medical room. He stood in the doorway with his hand near his pistol. The woman's eyes opened and she looked around confused. Then she saw Daniel and her training took over. She ripped out her IV and launched herself off the bed at him with stunning speed. Daniel barely had time to block her first strike. She was fast and skilled, and even injured, she fought like a trained soldier. They crashed into the hallway, and Daniel had to use every bit of his combat experience to defend himself without seriously hurting her. She went for his throat, and he caught her wrist. She swept his leg, and he rolled with it. They grappled and struck and blocked in a brutal exchange that lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then Daniel managed to pin her against the wall with her arm twisted behind her back. They were both breathing hard. "Stop," Daniel said. "I am not your enemy. I found you tied to a tree." The woman struggled for another moment, then went still. She turned her head to look at him, and Daniel saw her eyes were gray and sharp. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Daniel Hayes," he said. "Captain, former Colony Defense Force. This is my compound. You are on Kepler 442b. The woman stared at him like he had said something impossible. "That is not possible," she said. "There are no survivors on Kepler 442b. The colony died 20 years ago." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "I know," he said. "I was there. I am the survivor." He released her carefully and stepped back. The woman rubbed her wrist and watched him warily. "What is your name?" Daniel asked. "Kate Morrison," she said. "Lieutenant, Frontier Exploration Corps. What year do you think it is?" Daniel asked. She looked at him like he was crazy. "Toisen," she said. "Why would you ask that?" "Because for me it is also 2207, Daniel said. "I have been alone on this planet for 20 years. No rescue ever came. No missions ever arrived, until today when I found you tied to a tree, bleeding and unconscious." Kate's expression changed from suspicion to shock. "That does not make sense," she said. "Earth lifted the quarantine on this system 15 years ago. Multiple expeditions have surveyed this planet. How could they miss a survivor?" Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you talking about?" he said. "What quarantine? What expeditions?" Kate was staring at him now with growing understanding. "You really do not know," she said softly. "Kepler 442b was quarantined after a plague killed the colony. It was declared a biological hazard zone. The quarantine was lifted in 2192 after studies showed the plague had died out. Since then, at least 6 different research teams have visited this planet. None of them reported finding anyone alive." Daniel sat down heavily on the floor. His mind was racing. 6 expeditions and none of them found him. His distress signals that he broadcast every single day for 20 years. His compound with its solar panels and lights. His greenhouse full of earth plants. How could 6 expeditions miss all of that unless someone made sure they missed it? Unless someone was hiding him. Kate sat down across from him. She was watching him carefully, but the hostility was gone from her face. "I need to understand what is happening here," she said. "Tell me why you're on this planet, why you were tied to that tree." Daniel said. Kate's jaw tightened. "I was investigating disappearances in this sector. Ships going missing, colonies losing contact. My ship was attacked by unknown hostiles 3 days ago. They killed my crew. They captured me. I managed to send a distress signal before they knocked me out. When I woke up, I was restrained to that tree. I do not know why they left me there. I do not know what they wanted." She looked at Daniel. "Until you came, I thought I was dead." Daniel nodded slowly. "Someone brought you here," he said, "to this planet where I have been hidden for 20 years. That cannot be coincidence. We need to figure out who is doing this and why. But first we need to make sure they are not coming back for you tonight." Kate stood up. "Do you have weapons?" she asked. Daniel smiled grimly. "I have been alone on a hostile planet for 20 years, he said. "I have lots of weapons." Daniel showed Kate his armory and watched her eyes widen. The room was filled with weapons he had collected and modified over 20 years, rifles mounted on the walls, pistols in locked cases, explosives stored carefully in a reinforced cabinet, ammunition sorted by type and caliber. Kate picked up one of his rifles and examined it with professional interest. "You modified this," she said, "added a cooling system and extended the barrel. Where did you learn gunsmithing?" "I did not learn it," Daniel said. "I figured it out because my weapons kept breaking and I had no choice." Kate set the rifle down and looked at him differently. 20 years alone," she said quietly. "How did you stay sane?" Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Who says I stayed sane?" he said. "I talk to myself constantly. I have conversations with people who died decades ago. Some days I forget what year it is. But I survived, and that is what matters." Kate nodded slowly. "I think surviving is more than most people could have done. she said. You should be proud. Daniel did not know how to respond to that, so he handed her a pistol instead. This one is charged and ready, he said. Keep it on you at all times. If whoever left you at that tree comes back, we will need to be ready to fight. They spent the next hour going through Kate's equipment. She showed Daniel her mission logs, which were stored on her encrypted datapad. With her access codes, they could finally read the files. What Daniel saw made his blood run cold. Kate had been tracking a pattern of disappearances across multiple star systems, colony ships that never arrived at their destinations, research stations that stopped responding to communications, trade vessels that vanished without distress calls. At first, the incident seemed random, but Kate had found a connection. Every disappearance happened in sectors where humanity was expanding rapidly. Every lost ship or colony was in territory that had not been fully surveyed before humans arrived. Someone or something was targeting human expansion, and they were doing it quietly enough that Earth's government had not noticed the Q pattern. Kate had been investigating a cluster of disappearances near Kepler 4 and 42b when her ship was attacked. She pulled up footage from her ship's external cameras showing the attack. The hostiles came out of nowhere, moving faster than any ship Kate had ever seen. They disabled her engines with some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon. Then they boarded her ship. The boarding party moved through her vessel with terrifying efficiency, killing her crew within minutes. Kate managed to hide in an escape pod and send her distress signal before they found her. The last thing her cameras recorded was the hostiles dragging her unconscious body off her ship. After that, the footage ended. Daniel watched the video 3 times, trying to get a clear look at the attackers. They wore suits that made them hard to see, like some kind of adaptive camouflage. Their body shapes were humanoid, but something about their proportions seemed wrong. Their movements were too smooth, too fluid. These were not humans, and they were not like any alien species Daniel had ever heard of. This is connected to what happened to my colony, Daniel said. It has to be. Kate nodded. I think you are right, she said. Your colony was one of the early disappearances. The plague that killed everyone was blamed on natural causes, but what if it was not natural? What if it was a weapon designed to wipe out the colony, and you survived because of some genetic immunity, so instead of risking another attack, they just hid you. They jammed your signals and made sure no rescue missions could find you. Daniel felt rage building in his chest. 20 years, he said. They took 20 years of my life. They killed everyone I knew. And for what? To slow down human expansion. Kate's expression was grim. I think it is worse than that, she said. I think they have been doing this for decades. My mission logs show incidents going back 40 years. Hundreds of ships and colonies lost, thousands of people dead or missing. This is not just about slowing us down. This is systematic. This is someone trying to control humanity's growth into space without us even knowing it is happening. They worked through the night analyzing data and comparing notes. Daniel shared his own records from 20 years of observations. Strange lights in the sky that appeared and disappeared, structures in the deep forest that seemed to move between his visits, times when his electronic equipment failed for no reason. He had always assumed these were natural phenomena or equipment malfunction. Now they looked like evidence of surveillance. Someone had been watching him for 2 decades, studying him, making sure he stayed isolated and hidden. The more they learned, the more disturbing the picture became. This was not a simple case of hostile aliens attacking humans. This was something planned and coordinated. This was a long-term operation that had been running for decades, and Daniel and Kate had somehow stumbled into the middle of it. Around midnight, Kate's stomach growled loudly. Daniel realized he had not fed her since she woke up. He went to his kitchen and prepared a meal from his greenhouse vegetables. Kate ate hungrily while Daniel watched. It felt strange having another person at his table after so many years alone. Strange but good. When she finished eating, Kate looked at him seriously. We need to warn Earth, she said. If these hostiles have been operating for decades, then Earth needs to know. They need to investigate every disappearance and every lost colony. Maybe some of them are like you. Maybe there are other survivors hidden away. Daniel nodded. How do we send a message? He asked. Your ship is destroyed and my communications have been jammed for 20 years. Kate frowned. My ship had a backup emergency beacon, she said. It uses quantum entanglement to send messages faster than light. If I can find my ship and retrieve the beacon, we can send a warning that Earth will receive immediately. The problem is I do not know where my ship crashed. I was unconscious when they brought me here. Daniel thought for a moment. I can track it, he said. My compound has long-range sensors. If your ship came down anywhere within 100 kilometers, I can find the crash site. But we will have to wait until morning. Traveling at night is too dangerous and we both need rest. Kate agreed reluctantly. She looked exhausted and her head wound was probably causing her pain, even though she was not complaining. Daniel showed her to a sleeping room that had not been used in 20 years. The bed was dusty, but the room was secure. Get some sleep, Daniel said. I will take first watch. Kate looked like she wanted to argue, but her exhaustion won. Thank you, she said, for saving me, for believing me, for not giving up after 20 years alone. Daniel shrugged. I did not have a choice about giving up, he said. Giving up meant dying, and I was not ready to die. Kate smiled slightly. I think you are stronger than you realize, she said. Then she went into the room and closed the door. Daniel returned to his command center and sat down in front of his monitors. The screens showed feeds from cameras and sensors placed all around his compound. Everything was quiet. No movement except for local animals. No heat signatures except for him and Kate. But Daniel did not relax. Whoever had left Kate at that tree knew where his compound was. They could come at any time. He checked his weapons and made sure his automated defenses were armed and ready. Then he pulled up his long-range sensors and began searching for Kate's crashed ship. The sensors were old, but they still worked. He programmed them to look for anything with a human ship's energy signature. The search would take hours, so he set it to run automatically. While the sensors worked, Daniel sat in the dark and thought about everything he had learned. For 20 years he believed he was alone because of bad luck. Because the plague had killed everyone but him and Earth had abandoned this colony. Now he knew the truth was much worse. Someone had deliberately isolated him. Someone had studied him like he was a lab animal. And that someone was still out there watching and waiting. At 3 in the morning, the long-range sensors found something. A crashed ship 70 kilometers northeast of his compound. The energy signature matched what Kate had described. Daniel marked the location on his map and began planning the journey. 70 kilometers was a long distance to travel on foot through dangerous territory. It would take at least 2 days, maybe 3. They would need supplies and weapons and a route that avoided the worst of the predator zones. But they had no choice. That beacon was their only way to warn Earth. Daniel looked at the monitor showing Kate sleeping in the guest room. She had been through hell, captured, beaten, left to die, and now she was trusting him to get her home. Daniel felt a responsibility he had not felt in 20 years. He had been alone for so long that he forgot what it meant to have someone depending on him. He would not let her down. He would get that beacon and they would warn Earth. And then maybe, just maybe, he could finally stop being alone. Daniel woke Kate before dawn. She came out of the sleeping room alert and ready despite only getting a few hours of rest. I found your ship, Daniel said. 70 kilometers northeast. We can reach it in 2 days if we move fast and the weather holds. Kate nodded and began checking her equipment. Daniel had already packed supplies for the journey. Food, water, medical supplies, ammunition. Everything they might need for 2 days in hostile territory. They ate a quick breakfast and then geared up. Daniel watched Kate strap on her armor and weapons with practiced efficiency. She moved like someone who had done this 1,000 times. How long have you been with the Frontier Exploration Corps? He asked. 8 years, Kate said. I started as a shuttle pilot and worked my way up to scout missions. This was supposed to be a routine investigation. Nothing dangerous. She laughed bitterly. That is what they always say before everything goes wrong. They left the compound just as the sun was rising. Daniel locked down his defenses and activated a security system that would alert him if anyone tried to break in while they were gone. Then they headed northeast, following the route Daniel had mapped the night before. The journey started easy. They moved through the abandoned streets of New Haven, where Daniel knew every building and every hiding spot. But after an hour, they left the colony ruins behind and entered the wild forest. This was where Kepler 442b showed its true nature. The trees here grew massive and twisted. Their bark was hard as metal and their leaves were deep purple. Vines hung everywhere, thick as cables. The ground was covered in moss that glowed faintly in the shadows. Strange insects buzzed through the air and alien birds watched them from the branches. Daniel moved carefully, always scanning for threats. Kate followed close behind, trusting his knowledge of the terrain. After 3 hours of walking, they stopped to rest near a stream. The water on Kepler 442b was safe to drink once it was filtered, and Daniel had brought a portable filtration unit. While Kate filled their water bottles, Daniel kept watch. His sensors were picking up normal animal activity, but nothing dangerous yet. Kate sat down on a fallen log and looked at him. "You know this planet well," she said. "You have learned how to survive here." Daniel nodded. "I had to learn or die," he said. "The first year was the hardest. I made so many mistakes. I ate plants that made me sick. I walked into predator territory without knowing. I almost died a dozen times. But eventually I figured out the patterns. I learned which areas were safe and which were deadly. I learned when to hide and when to fight. This planet tried very hard to kill me, but I was too stubborn to let it." Kate smiled. "Stubborn is good," she said. "Stubborn keeps you alive when smart people give up." They continued walking, and Daniel found himself talking more than he had in years. He told Kate about his life before the plague, about his wife who died in the first week of the outbreak, about his friends and colleagues who he watched die one by one, about the children in the colony who never got to grow up. Kate listened without interrupting, and Daniel was grateful for that. He had carried these memories alone for so long that it felt good to finally share them with someone who could understand. When he finished talking, they walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kate began sharing her own story. She told him about growing up on Earth in the crowded cities that covered most of the continents, about joining the military because she wanted to see the stars, about her first time leaving Earth and realizing how small humanity was compared to the universe, about the friends she had lost when her ship was attacked. By the time they stopped for lunch, Daniel felt like he knew her better than he had known anyone in 20 years. In the afternoon, they entered more dangerous territory. Daniel's sensors started picking up razor-wing signatures. The big predators were active in this region, and they hunted in packs. Daniel and Kate moved slower now, staying under cover as much as possible. Daniel showed Kate how to read the signs of razor-wing presence: claw marks on trees, bones from their kills scattered on the ground, the distinct oily smell they left behind. Kate learned quickly, and soon she was spotting signs as fast as Daniel. They almost made it through the razor-wing territory without incident. Then, just as the sun was setting, Daniel's sensors screamed a warning. 3 heat signatures approaching fast from the west. Razor-wings, and they were hunting. Daniel and Kate ran for cover behind a cluster of large rocks. The razor-wings appeared moments later. They were massive creatures built like a cross between a wolf and a dinosaur. 6 legs ending in claws that could cut through steel, metallic scales that reflected the dying sunlight, jaws filled with teeth designed for tearing, and they were smart. Daniel had seen razor-wings coordinate their attacks with tactical precision. The 3 razor-wings circled the rocks where Daniel and Kate were hiding. They knew their prey was there, and they were being patient. Daniel checked his rifle and looked at Kate. She had her weapon ready, and her face showed no fear. "On my signal, we take the one on the left first," Daniel whispered. "Then the one on the right. Save the leader for last." Kate nodded. The razor-wings moved closer. Daniel could hear their breathing and the click of their claws on stone. He counted down from 3 using his fingers. 3, 2, 1. They opened fire together. The razor-wing on the left went down with a shriek. The one on the right charged, but Kate's aim was perfect, and she dropped it before it covered half the distance. The leader, the biggest one, roared and leaped at them, moving faster than something that size should be able to move. Daniel fired 3 shots center mass, but the creature's scales deflected most of the damage. It crashed into the rocks where they were hiding, and its claws raked across Daniel's armor, leaving deep scratches. Daniel rolled away, and Kate fired at its exposed flank. Her energy weapon punched through the scales, and the razor-wing screamed, but it did not die. It turned on Kate with rage in its eyes. Daniel did not think. He threw himself at the creature and drove his combat knife into the base of its skull where the scales were thinnest. The razor-wing thrashed and nearly threw him off, but Daniel held on and twisted the knife. The creature went limp and crashed to the ground. Daniel pulled his knife free and stepped back, breathing hard. Kate was staring at him. "That was either very brave or very stupid," she said. Daniel grinned. "After 20 years alone, I stopped seeing much difference between the two." They checked their wounds. Daniel's armor had saved him from serious injury, but he had bruises that would hurt tomorrow. Kate was unharmed. They needed to move. Razoring blood would attract scavengers, and they did not want to be here when night fell completely. They walked for another hour until they found a defensible position in a small cave. Daniel checked the cave for inhabitants and found it empty. They set up a perimeter alarm system and then made camp. That night they took turns on watch. When it was Kate's turn, Daniel tried to sleep, but his mind would not quiet. He kept thinking about the hostiles who had attacked Kate's ship, about the decades of disappearances, about the enemy that had stolen 20 years of his life. Anger burned in his chest. For so long he had blamed fate for his isolation. Now he knew there was someone to blame, someone who had made deliberate choices to hurt humanity. And when they found that beacon and warned Earth, Daniel was going to make sure those responsible paid for what they had done. He eventually fell into an uneasy sleep, filled with dreams of razor wings and unknown enemies. When he woke just before dawn, Kate was sitting by the cave entrance watching the forest. "You should have woken me for my watch," Daniel said. Kate shook her head. "You needed the rest," she said. "Besides, I have been thinking. Once we get the beacon and warn Earth, what happens next? Do we wait for rescue or do we try to find these hostiles ourselves?" Daniel sat up. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Kate turned to look at him and her gray eyes were hard. "I want to find whoever killed my crew," she said. "I want to find whoever imprisoned you for 20 years. I want to make them answer for what they have done." Daniel smiled grimly. "Then we are in agreement," he said. "Let us get that beacon. Let us warn Earth, and then let us go hunting." The journey back to the compound took 3 days because they were carrying the wounded hostile. The creature was heavy and its strange biology made it difficult to keep alive. Kate had medical nanites in her equipment designed for interrogation. The nanites would keep the hostile stable and also make it more cooperative with answering questions. But they needed to get it back to Daniel's compound first, where they had better equipment and security. During the journey, the hostile remained unconscious. Daniel and Kate took turns carrying it and watching for threats. The forest seemed quieter than before, like it sensed something had changed. They encountered no major predators on the way back. When they finally reached the compound, Daniel immediately locked down all defenses and activated every security system he had. If more hostiles were coming, he wanted to be ready. Kate set up an interrogation area in one of the compound's secure rooms. She placed the hostile in a restraint chair that Daniel had built years ago for a purpose he never thought he would use. Then she administered the truth serum nanites. The hostile woke slowly, its eyes opening behind its cracked helmet. Kate carefully removed the helmet and Daniel got his first clear look at what the architects really were. The creature was humanoid, but wrong in subtle ways. Its skin was pale gray and smooth like plastic. Its eyes were too large and completely black with no visible pupils. Its mouth was small and its teeth were flat and uniform. It had 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5. Looking at it made Daniel uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. It was like looking at a human drawn by someone who had never actually seen one. The hostile stared at them with those black eyes showing no emotion. Kate activated her recording device and began the interrogation. "Identify yourself," she said. The hostile's translator device crackled to life. "I am Observer 7 of the Architect Council," it said. "My purpose is to monitor developing species and ensure galactic stability." Kate leaned forward. "Tell us about the architects," she said. "What are you? Where do you come from? What do you want with humanity?" The hostile spoke in that flat, emotionless voice. "The architects are an ancient species older than most stars you see in your sky. We have watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia. We guide younger species by controlling their growth and removing those who threaten the balance." "We are the shepherds of the galaxy," Daniel interrupted. "You are not shepherds," he said. "You are murderers. You killed 12,000 people on this colony. You have killed thousands more across human space." The hostile turned its black eyes toward Daniel. "We are neither," it said. "We are regulators. Your species was flagged as a threat 40 years ago. When you began expanding beyond your home system, you spread too quickly. You adapt too efficiently. You are aggressive and unpredictable. Left unchecked, you would destabilize entire regions of space. We initiated containment protocols, plagues, equipment failures, navigation errors, all designed to slow your expansion to manageable levels." Kate's hands clenched into fists. "You have been sabotaging humanity for 40 years, she said. "How many colonies have you destroyed? How many ships have you made disappear?" The hostile tilted its head. "Approximately 412 incidents," it said, "all executed with minimal detection. Your species attributed the losses to natural causes or accidents. We were careful to leave no evidence of intervention. It was an efficient operation until you—" The hostile looked at Daniel. "You were an anomaly. Your genetic immunity to our plague weapon was unexpected. We considered eliminating you separately, but that risked exposure." Instead, we chose to observe, to study your adaptations, to use you as a living test subject for developing better weapons. We hid your settlement from rescue missions using jamming technology. We monitored your survival patterns for 20 years. Your data has been invaluable. Daniel felt sick. They had watched him suffer for 20 years, watched him slowly go mad from loneliness, watched him struggle and nearly die 100 times. And they had done it just to collect data. Kate continued the interrogation. "Where is your base of operations?" she asked. "How many architects are in this system?" The hostile hesitated, and Kate increased the dosage of the truth serum. The hostile's body tensed, but the nanites forced it to speak. "We have a monitoring station in orbit around Kepler 442b's second moon," it said. 15 architects are currently stationed there. The station is cloaked and armed with defensive weapons. You cannot reach it. Daniel and Kate exchanged looks. 15 hostiles. That was more than they could handle alone, but it was also fewer than expected. "Why so few?" Kate asked. The hostile's expression did not change. "This sector is considered low priority," it said. "Your message to Earth has changed that. The Council is now aware that humanity knows about our operations. They are debating whether to escalate to full extermination protocols or to retreat and reassess." "Full extermination," Kate repeated slowly. "What does that mean?" The hostile spoke without emotion. "It means the complete destruction of all human colonies and the sterilization of Earth itself. The Council has the capability. It would take approximately 6 months to deploy the necessary weapons. Your species would not survive." The room went silent. Daniel felt cold rage building in his chest. They were talking about killing all of humanity like it was a routine maintenance task. Kate's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "What would make the Council choose to retreat instead?" she asked. The hostile considered the question. "Sufficient resistance," it said. "If humanity proves too costly to eliminate the Council, might decide containment is no longer worth the resources. They would withdraw and focus on other species. But your kind would need to demonstrate military capability, far beyond what we have observed. You would need to make us fear you." Daniel smiled grimly. "Fear," he said. "We can do fear." Kate looked at him. "What are you thinking?" Daniel stood up. "We have a station full of architects 15 kilometers above us," he said. "They are debating whether to kill all of humanity. I say we give them something to debate about. We go up there and we hit them so hard they never forget it. We show them that humans do not go quietly." Kate stared at him. "That is suicide," she said. "We do not have a ship. We do not have proper weapons. It is just the 2 of us against 15 of them in a fortified station." Daniel's expression did not change. "Then we better be smart about it," he said. They spent the rest of the day planning. The hostile told them everything about the station's layout and defenses under the influence of the truth serum. It was designed to be invisible to human sensors, but Kate's equipment was more advanced. She modified her scanner to detect the cloaking field's energy signature. By evening, they had located the station in orbit. It was small, roughly the size of a large house. The architects clearly preferred efficiency over comfort. The station had minimal weapons because they never expected to be attacked. Their main defense was invisibility. Daniel and Kate began gathering equipment. Daniel had one last trick he had been saving for 20 years. A small shuttle hidden in an underground hangar beneath his compound. It had been the colony's emergency evacuation craft, and Daniel had kept it maintained and fueled all this time. He never used it because he had nowhere to go. But now he had a destination. Kate checked the shuttle's systems and declared it spaceworthy. It would be cramped for 2 people, and it had no weapons, but it could reach orbit. That was all they needed. Before they left, Daniel went to see the hostile one more time. The creature was secured in the restraint chair exactly where they had left it. Daniel stood in front of it and looked into those black, emotionless eyes. "You made a mistake," Daniel said quietly. "You thought you could control us. You thought you could slow us down and keep us afraid, but you forgot something important about humans. We do not stay down. Push us and we push back harder. Hurt us and we remember. Try to kill us and we become something you cannot stop. I am proof of that. You tried to break me with 20 years of isolation. Instead, you made me stronger. You made me into exactly the kind of human you should fear." The hostile stared at him. "You cannot win," it said. "Even if you destroy this station, the Council will send more. You have only guaranteed your species' extinction." Daniel smiled. "Maybe," he said. "But at least we will go down fighting. That is what humans do. We fight, and sometimes fighting is enough." He turned and walked out of the room. Behind him, the hostile sat in silence, watching him leave with those empty black eyes. Tomorrow, Daniel and Kate would take the fight to the architects. Tomorrow, they would show an ancient species what humanity was capable of. And tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that humans did not accept defeat quietly. They reached the crash site on the second day just after noon. Kate's ship was scattered across a clearing in pieces. The main hull had broken apart on impact, and debris was spread over 100 meters. Daniel and Kate approached carefully, watching for threats. The ship had been here for several days, and scavengers had already started picking through the wreckage, but Daniel's sensors showed no large predators nearby. They moved into the clearing, and Kate went straight to what remained of the cockpit. She climbed through twisted metal and broken equipment, searching for the emergency beacon. Daniel kept watch while she worked. His eyes constantly scanned the tree line. Something felt wrong about this place. It was too quiet. Even the normal forest sounds had stopped. After 10 minutes, Kate emerged from the wreckage holding a small device the size of her fist. "Got it," she said. "The beacon is intact. Now we just need to activate it and send our message." Daniel was about to respond when his sensors went crazy. Multiple heat signatures all around them. Closing fast. "They are here," Daniel shouted. Kate looked up just as the hostiles appeared from the forest. There were at least a dozen of them, moving with coordinated precision. They wore their adaptive, camouflage suits that made them flicker and blur as they moved. Their weapons were already firing energy bolts that turned the clearing into a war zone. Daniel and Kate ran for cover behind the largest piece of the crashed ship. Energy blasts hit all around them, melting metal and scorching earth. These hostiles had been waiting for them. They knew Daniel and Kate would come for the beacon, and they had set an ambush. Daniel returned fire with his rifle. His shots were accurate, but the hostiles moved too fast, and their camouflage made them hard to target. Beside him, Kate was firing her energy pistol with deadly precision. She hit one hostile square in the chest and it went down, but more took its place. The hostiles were spreading out, trying to flank them. Daniel pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it toward the tree line. The explosion sent 2 hostiles flying and gave him and Kate a moment to reposition. They moved deeper into the wreckage using the twisted metal as cover. The hostiles followed, firing constantly. Daniel's armor took several hits and warning lights flashed on his helmet display. His shields were at 30%. Another few hits and he would be exposed. Kate was working on the beacon while they fought. She had connected it to her datapad and was programming their warning message. Daniel covered her firing and controlled bursts to conserve ammunition. A hostile appeared on their right side, trying to flank them. Daniel spun and fired 3 shots. The first 2 missed, but the third caught the hostile in the neck. It dropped its weapon and fell. How much longer? Daniel shouted over the sound of weapons fire. 30 seconds. Kate called back. The beacon needs to charge before it can transmit. Daniel nodded and pulled another grenade. He cooked it for 2 seconds, then threw it toward the largest group of hostiles. The explosion was massive and sent debris flying. 3 hostiles went down. The others retreated momentarily, giving Daniel and Kate breathing room. The beacon in Kate's hands began to glow with a soft blue light. "It is ready," she said, "sending the message now." She pressed a button and the beacon pulsed once with bright light. The message was away, traveling faster than light to Earth through quantum entanglement. In a few moments, Earth would know the truth about the disappearances and about the hostiles hunting humanity. But first, Daniel and Kate had to survive long enough to see what happened next. The hostiles regrouped and attacked again. This time they came from all sides at once. Daniel and Kate stood back to back in the center of the wreckage, fighting desperately. Daniel's rifle ran out of ammunition, and he switched to his pistol. Kate was down to her last energy cell. They were outnumbered and outgunned and slowly being overwhelmed. A hostile charged at Daniel from the left. Daniel blocked its strike with his armored forearm and drove his knife into its chest. The blade found something vital and the hostile collapsed. But 2 more took its place. Kate shot one and Daniel tackled the other. They rolled across the ground, struggling for control. The hostile was strong, unnaturally strong, and its hands went for Daniel's throat. Daniel managed to break free and grabbed a piece of sharp metal from the wreckage. He swung it like a club and caught the hostile across its helmet. The helmet cracked and the hostile fell back. Daniel scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. His body ached and his shields were gone. One more good hit and he was done. Beside him, Kate was equally exhausted. They could not keep this up much longer. Then something unexpected happened. One of the hostiles spoke. The voice came through a translator device and it sounded wrong somehow. Too flat. Too emotionless. "You cannot win, humans," it said. "You have delayed the inevitable, but you cannot stop us. We are the architects. We have guided galactic civilization for 1,000 of your years. We shape species and cull those who threaten the balance. Your kind spreads too fast, adapts too quickly. You are dangerous and must be controlled." Daniel felt rage surge through his exhaustion. He looked at the hostile who had spoken. "You killed my wife," Daniel said. "You killed everyone I knew. You stole 20 years of my life." The hostile tilted its head like it was confused. "One human life means nothing," it said. "We act for the greater stability of the galaxy. Sacrifices must be made." Daniel laughed, and it was not a sane sound. "You made a mistake," he said. "You should have killed me with the others. But you did not. You let me live. You let me adapt. You let me become something you were not ready for, and now you are going to regret it." Daniel did something that surprised everyone, including Kate. He charged. Not away from the hostiles, but directly at them. 20 years of rage and loneliness poured out of him. His body moved with enhanced reflexes, from the medical nanites he had been using for years. His muscles had been hardened by 2 decades of survival, and his mind had been sharpened by endless solitary combat. He became a force of pure destruction. The first hostile he reached never saw him coming. Daniel's fist shattered its helmet, and the creature dropped. The second tried to block, but Daniel was too fast. He broke its arm and then its neck. The third fired point blank, but Daniel twisted and the energy bolt missed by centimeters. He disarmed the hostile and used its own weapon to shoot 2 more. Kate was right behind him, fighting with equal fury. Together they tore through the hostile line like they were made of paper. The architects had studied Daniel for 20 years, but they had only watched him survive. They had never seen him truly fight. They had never witnessed what a human pushed beyond all limits could become. And they were learning now. The battle turned into chaos. The hostiles tried to regroup, but Daniel and Kate gave them no chance. They moved through the clearing, leaving broken bodies behind them. Daniel's hands were covered in blood, some of it his own. His armor was cracked and failing. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every hostile he fought represented everyone he had lost. Every blow he struck was for another year of loneliness. Kate fought beside him with grim determination. Her energy pistol had run dry, so she fought with her knives and her fists. She was smaller than Daniel, but just as deadly. Together they were unstoppable. When the last hostile fell, there was silence. Daniel and Kate stood in the middle of the wreckage, surrounded by bodies. Both of them were bleeding and exhausted, but they were alive, and they had won. Kate looked at Daniel with something like awe in her eyes. "I have never seen anyone fight like that," she said. "Where did that come from?" 20 years of anger," Daniel said quietly. 20 years of having no one to fight for and nothing to fight against. Today, I finally had both. He looked down at the fallen hostiles. "We need to take one back alive," he said. "We need answers." Kate nodded and began checking the bodies. Most were dead, but she found one that was still breathing. They secured it with restraints and began the long walk back to Daniel's compound. Behind them, the clearing was silent, except for the wind moving through the trees. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The shuttle launched just before dawn. Daniel sat in the pilot's seat with his hands on controls he had not touched in 20 years. Beside him, Kate monitored their systems and tracked the architect station. The shuttle climbed through Kepler 442b's atmosphere, shaking and rattling, but holding together. Daniel watched the planet fall away beneath them. New Haven looked so small from up here, a tiny cluster of buildings being slowly consumed by alien forest. He had spent 20 years trapped down there, never imagining he would see it from space again. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere and entered orbit. Stars surrounded them, cold and distant. Kate's scanner picked up the cloaked station immediately. There, she said, pointing at her display. 200 kilometers ahead. Daniel adjusted their course. The shuttle had no weapons and minimal shields. Their plan relied entirely on surprise and speed. If the architects detected them too early, this would be over before it started. Kate had prepared explosives using materials from Daniel's compound. They were crude but powerful. The plan was simple. Dock with the station. Plant the explosives. Get out before they detonated. Simple but incredibly dangerous. As they approached the station, Kate made final checks on their equipment. Daniel watched the empty space ahead, knowing the station was there but unable to see it. The cloaking technology was impressive. Without Kate's modified scanner, they would have flown right past it. At 100 kilometers, Kate spoke quietly. "They will detect us soon," she said. "Once we are within range of their sensors, they will know we are coming." Daniel nodded. "Then we go fast," he said. He pushed the shuttle's engines to maximum. The old craft protested but accelerated. Warning lights flashed on the control panel. They were burning fuel faster than the shuttle could handle for long. But they did not need long. Just enough time to reach the station. At 50 kilometers, Kate's scanner picked up activity from the station. "They know we are here," she said. Daniel saw it too. The station's defensive weapons were powering up. Energy signatures bloomed on the scanner. The architects were preparing to fire. Daniel pushed the engines even harder. The shuttle screamed through space, closing the distance. 30 kilometers, 20. The station fired. Energy bolts lanced through space toward them. Daniel threw the shuttle into evasive maneuvers. The small craft twisted and rolled. Most of the shots missed, but one clipped their rear shield. Alarm screamed. "Shields at 40%, Kate called out. "Another hit and we are done." Daniel did not slow down. He flew straight at the station, dodging and weaving. 10 kilometers, 5. The station was firing constantly now, the space around them filled with deadly energy. Another bolt hit them and their shields dropped to 15%. But they were almost there. Daniel brought the shuttle alongside the station's docking port. The cloaking field flickered and failed this close, and they could finally see the station. It was sleek and angular, built from materials that seemed to absorb light. Kate worked quickly on the docking controls. The architects were trying to lock them out, but Kate's hacking skills were better. After 30 seconds, the docking port opened. "Got it," Kate said. Daniel sealed the shuttle, and they both grabbed their weapons and the explosives. The moment they entered the station, gravity took hold. Architect gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard. They moved through the airlock and into a corridor. The station's interior was utilitarian. Metal walls, harsh lighting, no decoration or comfort, everything designed for function. Daniel's helmet display showed the station's layout, based on information from their captured architect. The main control center was at the station's core. That was where the other architects would be. That was where they needed to plant the explosives. They moved quickly and quietly. The corridors were empty at first. Then they heard movement ahead. Kate signaled and they pressed against the wall. 2 architects appeared around the corner. Daniel and Kate opened fire simultaneously. The architects went down before they could raise an alarm. Daniel and Kate kept moving. They reached a junction and Kate checked her scanner. "Control center is straight ahead," she said, "but there are multiple heat signatures, at least 8 hostiles." Daniel checked his rifle. "We go in fast and hard," he said. "No mercy. No hesitation." Kate nodded. They moved to the control center door. Daniel planted a breaching charge and they took cover. The charge detonated and the door exploded inward. Daniel and Kate charged through the smoke. The control center was large and filled with equipment. 8 architects were inside, just like Kate's scanner had shown. They turned toward the intrusion, but Daniel and Kate were already firing. The battle was brutal in close quarters. Energy bolts and bullets filled the air. Daniel took down 3 architects in the first 10 seconds. Kate got 2 more. The remaining architects tried to fight back, but they were not prepared for this kind of aggression. These were scientists and observers, not warriors. Within a minute, all 8 were down. Daniel immediately began planting explosives while Kate covered the door. More architects would be coming. Daniel worked fast, placing charges on critical systems and structural supports. The explosives had timers set for 5 minutes. That would give them just enough time to get back to the shuttle. He was placing the last charge when Kate shouted a warning. "Incoming." Architects poured through the doorway. More than Daniel expected. These must have been the station's security force. They were better armed and better trained than the others. The fight became desperate. Daniel and Kate fell back using the control center's equipment as cover. They fired and moved and fired again. Daniel's rifle overheated and he switched to his pistol. Kate threw a grenade that took out 3 architects, but more kept coming. "We need to go," Kate shouted. "Charges are set," Daniel agreed. They fought their way back toward the door. An architect blocked their path and Daniel tackled it. They crashed to the ground, grappling. The architect was strong, but Daniel had rage on his side. He broke its neck and kept moving. They reached the corridor and ran. Behind them, architects gave chase. Daniel and Kate fired backward without aiming, just trying to slow them down. They reached the docking port with 2 minutes left on the timers. Kate sealed the airlock behind them and they jumped into the shuttle. Daniel fired the engines before they were even fully seated. The shuttle pulled away from the station. 30 seconds. Kate counted down. 20. Daniel pushed the engines to full power, putting as much distance as possible between them and the station. 10 seconds, 5, the explosives detonated. The station came apart in a series of brilliant flashes. Hull breaches vented atmosphere. Systems exploded. The entire structure began to break up. Daniel watched it happen in the shuttle's rear display. 20 years of rage, 20 years of pain, all of it released in those explosions. The architects had taken everything from him. Now he had taken something from them. Kate was smiling despite their situation. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "That was the easy part," he said. "Now we have to survive the landing." The shuttle was damaged and fuel was running low. Getting back to the planet's surface was going to be tricky. But they had destroyed an architect station. They had shown an ancient species that humans could fight back. That was worth any risk. The descent through the atmosphere was rough. The shuttle's damaged shield struggled against the heat and friction. Warning alarms screamed constantly. Daniel fought the controls, keeping the shuttle from spinning out. They were coming down too fast and their landing thrusters were barely functional. "This is going to be a hard landing," Daniel warned. Kate braced herself. "I've had worse," she said. Daniel was not sure he believed her, but he appreciated the confidence. They broke through the clouds. The ground rushed up to meet them. Daniel fired the thrusters at the last moment, trying to slow their descent. The shuttle hit hard. They bounced once, twice, then skidded across the ground for 100 meters before coming to rest against a cluster of trees. Daniel sat in the pilot seat, breathing hard. His body ached from the impact. Beside him, Kate was checking herself for injuries. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "Bruised but functional," Kate replied. "You, same," Daniel said. They climbed out of the damaged shuttle. Smoke rose from its engines and the hull was cracked in a dozen places. It would never fly again, but that was fine. They had accomplished what they needed to. They began the walk back to the compound. It was a full day's journey on foot. As they walked, Kate looked at Daniel. "What do you think happens now?" she asked. "Do you think Earth will send help?" Daniel thought about it. "I think we started something," he said. "We sent our warning. We destroyed an architect station. Earth knows the truth now. Whether they send help or not, we showed the architects that humans do not surrender. That has to count for something." Kate nodded. "It counts for everything," she said. They walked in silence for a while. Above them, Kepler 442b's sun climbed toward noon. Somewhere out in space, the Architect Council was learning what happened to their station. Somewhere out there, humanity was preparing for a war they never knew they were already fighting. And here on a remote colony world, 2 survivors walked home victorious against impossible odds, because that was what humans did. They survived. They fought. And they never gave up. 3 weeks passed before Earth's response came. Daniel and Kate spent those weeks fortifying the compound and preparing for whatever might happen next. They knew the architects would not ignore the destruction of their station. Either Earth would send help or the architects would send revenge. Every night Daniel stood on the roof of his compound and watched the stars, wondering which would arrive first. Kate spent her time analyzing all the data they had collected about the architects. She compiled reports and mission logs. She documented everything they had learned. If Earth did send help, they would need this information. If the architects came instead, at least someone would know the truth eventually. During those 3 weeks, Daniel and Kate grew closer. They shared stories and memories. They trained together and planned together. After 20 years of solitude, Daniel had forgotten what it meant to have a partner. Someone to watch your back, someone to trust completely. Kate gave him that, and he gave her the same. They were a team forged in combat and bound by shared purpose. On the morning of the 22nd day, Daniel's sensors picked up something entering the system. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Big ships with powerful engines. Daniel's heart raced as he checked the signatures. They were human. Earth had sent a fleet, the largest fleet he had ever seen. Dozens of warships and support vessels. They entered orbit around Kepler 442b in formation. Daniel and Kate watched from the compound as the fleet took position. Then a shuttle detached from the flagship and began descending to the surface. It landed in the clearing outside New Haven, where the old colony landing pad used to be. Daniel and Kate walked out to meet it armed and cautious. They had been betrayed before. But when the shuttle's ramp lowered, the person who emerged wore the uniform of Earth's combined fleet. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her rank insignia showed she was an admiral. Behind her came a squad of Marines in full combat armor. The admiral walked forward and stopped a few meters from Daniel and Kate. She studied them for a long moment. Then she saluted. "Admiral Christine Palmer," she said. "I am here on behalf of Earth's government and military command. You two have caused quite a stir." Daniel returned the salute. "Captain Daniel Hayes," he said. "This is Lieutenant Kate Morrison. We sent the warning about the architects." Admiral Palmer nodded. "We received your message," she said. "It arrived 3 weeks ago and caused immediate panic. Your data was analyzed by every intelligence agency we have. The pattern of disappearances you uncovered matched classified incidents we had been investigating separately. We never connected them until your warning. The government mobilized every available ship. This fleet represents the largest military deployment since the colony wars. We are here to secure this system and prepare for potential architect retaliation." She paused. "We are also here to bring you home." Daniel felt something catch in his throat. Home. After 20 years, the word barely had meaning. But Kate smiled. "That would be appreciated," she said. Admiral Palmer's expression softened slightly. "I read your reports," she said to Daniel. "What you survived here, what you endured, I cannot imagine. 20 years alone. Most people would have given up." Daniel shrugged. "Giving up meant dying," he said. "I was not ready to die." The Admiral nodded. "Well, you have given humanity a fighting chance. Your warning and your destruction of that architect station bought us time. The Architect Council is in chaos according to our intelligence. They never expected resistance. They are debating their next move. That gives us time to prepare, time to militarize, time to make sure humanity survives." Admiral Palmer gestured to her Marines. "Secure the area," she ordered. "I want this compound and the surrounding territory under full protection. These two are valuable assets." The Marines spread out efficiently. Daniel watched them work and felt strange. For 20 years he had defended this place alone. Now suddenly there were other humans doing it. It felt unreal, like a dream he might wake from. But Kate's hand on his shoulder was solid and real. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Daniel nodded. The Admiral led them back to her shuttle. Inside she had a command center set up with computers and communication equipment. She pulled up a holographic display showing the entire sector. "These red marks are confirmed architect incidents," she said. "Colonies destroyed. Ships lost. There are hundreds of them going back decades. Your data helped us identify 60 more we had not connected. We estimate the architects have killed over 200,000 humans in their containment operation." Daniel felt sick. 200,000. The number was staggering. "My colony was just one of hundreds," he said. Admiral Palmer's expression was grim. "Yes," she said. "And now we know the truth. Now we can fight back. Earth is mobilizing for war. We are increasing military production. We are fortifying all frontier colonies. We are establishing rapid response fleets. And we are hunting for more architect facilities. Your destroyed station gave us valuable intelligence. We know what to look for now." She turned to face Daniel and Kate directly. "I am forming a special operations unit," she said. "People who understand the architect threat. People who have fought them and survived. I want both of you to join. You would report directly to me. Your mission would be to locate and neutralize architect operations throughout human space. You would have the best equipment and the best support, but it would be dangerous. Probably the most dangerous assignment in the fleet. Kate did not hesitate. I am in, she said. My crew died because of the architects. I want to make sure no one else loses their crew the same way. Admiral Palmer looked at Daniel. What about you, Captain? After 20 years alone, do you want to keep fighting? Or do you want to go home and rest? Daniel thought about it. He thought about Earth, about cities and crowds, about living a quiet life, but he also thought about the 12,000 people who died on this colony, about his wife who died in his arms, about 20 years of isolation. The architects had taken all of that from him. Yes, Daniel said. I want to keep fighting. The Admiral smiled. Good, she said. Because we need you. Both of you. You have experience none of our other soldiers have. You understand how the architects think, how they operate. That knowledge is invaluable. Welcome to the Architect Response Division. You ship out in 1 week. Use that time to rest and recover. You have earned it. The next week passed in a blur. Engineers from the fleet repaired and upgraded Daniel's compound. Medical personnel checked both him and Kate thoroughly. They were debriefed by intelligence officers who asked 1,000 questions. Other survivors from architect attacks arrived to share their stories. Daniel learned he was not as unique as he thought. There were others who had survived against impossible odds, others who had been hidden or forgotten. The architect's operation had cracks in it and humans had slipped through. Now those survivors were gathering, forming the core of Earth's resistance. On the last day before shipping out, Daniel stood on the roof of his compound one final time. Kate joined him. The fleet was visible in orbit, bright points of light against the darkness. Below them, New Haven looked different, no longer abandoned but full of activity. Marines patrolling, engineers working, humanity reclaiming what had been lost. This place was my prison for 20 years, Daniel said. Now it is becoming something else. A symbol, maybe. Kate nodded. A symbol that humans do not give up. She said, that we survive no matter what, that we fight back. Daniel smiled. The architects wanted to control us, he said. They wanted to keep us small and afraid. Instead, they made us angry. They united us. They gave us a common enemy. That might be their biggest mistake. Kate laughed. Definitely their biggest mistake. She said, never make humans angry. We are terrible when we are angry. The next morning, they boarded a transport ship heading to the fleet's flagship. Daniel took one last look at Kepler 442b as they lifted off. The planet had been his whole world for 20 years. Now it was just one world among many, one battlefield in a war that spanned the stars. The transport docked with the flagship and Daniel and Kate were escorted to the Architect Response Division section. The facility was impressive. Training rooms, armories, intelligence centers, and other soldiers. Men and women from across human space, all with the same hard look in their eyes, all survivors of architect attacks. Admiral Palmer met them in the command center. She introduced them to the rest of the division, pilots, engineers, intelligence officers, soldiers. All the best humanity had to offer. This is your team, Palmer said. Learn their strengths. Trust them with your lives. You will be deploying in teams of 6 to investigate and eliminate architect presence throughout human space. Your first mission begins tomorrow. Daniel looked around at the faces of his new team. For 20 years he had been alone. Now he was surrounded by people who understood what he had been through. People who had survived their own hells. People ready to fight. Kate caught his eye and smiled. Ready for round 2? She asked. Daniel smiled back. Always. He said. 6 months later, Daniel and Kate led their team on a raid against an architect facility on the edge of human space. They moved through the enemy compound with practiced efficiency. Every lesson learned. Every scar earned. They fought together and they won together. The war against the architects would be long. Daniel Hayes woke up at dawn like he did every single day for the past 20 years. His eyes opened to the same cracked ceiling in the same empty room in the same dead colony that used to be called New Haven. He lay there, for a moment listening to the sounds of Kepler 442b, waking up outside his reinforced walls. The alien birds made their clicking sounds in the trees, and somewhere far away a razorwing screamed its morning hunt call. Daniel sat up slowly and reached for his boots. His body ached in places that never used to ache back when he was 34 years old, and this planet was full of living people who knew his name and smiled when they saw him. Now he was 54 and his body was a map of scars and his mind was a library of survival skills he never wanted to learn. He pulled on his boots and stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over the abandoned buildings of New Haven and painting everything in shades of orange and red that would have been beautiful if Daniel still remembered how to think things were beautiful. Went through his morning routine with the precision of a machine. First, he checked the solar panels on the roof to make sure nothing had damaged them during the night. Then he checked his water filtration system and his air recyclers and his backup generators. Every single piece of equipment in his compound had to work perfectly, or he would die, and Daniel had spent 20 years making sure he did not die. After the equipment checks, he went to the greenhouse and picked vegetables for his breakfast. The greenhouse was the thing he was most proud of because keeping Earth plants alive on an alien planet was harder than anyone back home ever imagined. He had lost crops to alien fungus and to temperature swings and to his own mistakes in those early desperate years. But now the greenhouse thrived and gave him food and gave him something to care for besides himself. Daniel ate his breakfast alone at a table built for 6 people. He used to move between all 6 chairs during meals just to feel like he had company, but he stopped doing that after year 12 because it made him feel more crazy than eating in silence. While he ate, he reviewed his plans for the day on a handheld computer that was older than some of the colonists had been when they died. Today was a supply run day, which meant leaving the compound and heading into the ruins of the colony's eastern sector. Daniel hated supply runs because they took him past places filled with memories he spent most of his energy trying to forget. But he needed parts to repair one of his defense turrets, and the eastern sector had a warehouse that might still have what he needed. He finished, eating and cleaned his plate and put it back in the cabinet where it lived between meals. Then he went to his armory and began the process of gearing up. Daniel wore light armor made from pieces of different things he had scavenged over the years. Hull plating from crashed ships, Kevlar from military uniforms, ceramic plates from security doors, all of it held together with adhesive and wire and hope. He strapped on his weapons next. A plasma rifle across his back, a magnetic pistol on his hip, a combat knife on his chest, and in a hidden pocket, a small explosive device that he carried everywhere because if something caught him and he could not escape, then he would at least choose how he died. He looked at himself in the mirror before leaving and saw a man who barely looked human anymore. His hair was long and gray and tied back with copper wire. His face was covered in scars. His eyes were the eyes of someone who had seen too much and survived too long. Daniel left his compound through the main airlock and felt the humid air of Kepler 442b hit his face. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, but it was thicker than Earth's and it smelled like metal and flowers at the same time. He walked through the overgrown streets of New Haven and tried not to look at the buildings where people used to live. Alien vines had covered most of the structures now, and local trees had burst through roofs and walls. Nature was taking back what humans had briefly claimed. Daniel moved quietly and carefully because this planet had predators, and he had learned long ago that being loud meant being dead. His armor had sensors that tracked movement and heat signatures within 100 meters. Right now the sensors showed small animals and birds, but nothing dangerous. Still, he kept his hand near his pistol, because 20 years of survival had taught him that danger came from nowhere when you least expected it. He reached the eastern sector after an hour of walking. The warehouse he needed was a large gray building that looked like it might collapse at any moment. Daniel approached it slowly and checked for signs of razoring activity. The big predators liked to nest in large abandoned structures, and Daniel had nearly died to one 15 years ago when he got careless. But today the building looked empty. He entered through a side door that he had forced open years ago and stepped into the darkness inside. His helmet light clicked on automatically and lit up rows of shelves filled with parts and equipment and supplies. This warehouse had been for colony maintenance, and it held everything from engine components to medical supplies to weapons. Daniel had raided it dozens of times over the years, but it was so large that he still found new things every visit. He found the parts he needed for his turret within 20 minutes. While he was searching, he also grabbed some medical supplies that were still sealed and some spare batteries for his equipment. Daniel was loading everything into his pack when his helmet sensors suddenly screamed a warning. Heat signature detected. Distance 3 kilometers. Moving closer. Daniel froze and looked at the sensor display. His heart began to pound. The signature was human. That was impossible. There were no other humans on Kepler 442b. There had not been another human on this planet for 20 years. Daniel's first thought was that his sensors were broken. His second thought was that he had finally gone insane like he always feared he would, but the signature remained on his display solid and real and getting closer. It was moving erratically like it was struggling or running from something. Daniel felt something he had not felt in 2 decades. Hope mixed with terror. He left the warehouse immediately and began moving toward the signal. His training kicked in automatically. He moved from cover to cover. He kept his rifle ready. He scanned constantly for threats. The heat signature was 2 kilometers away now, then 1 kilometer, then 500 meters. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. Maybe a rescue mission had finally come. Maybe Earth had sent someone to check on the colony. Maybe he was about to see another human face and hear another human voice and remember what it felt like to not be alone. The signature stopped moving. Daniel approached the last 100 meters with extreme caution. He could see the location now through the trees. It was near one of the massive ironwood trees that grew all over this region. Their trunks were 10 meters wide and their bark was harder than steel. Daniel raised his rifle and moved closer. Then he saw her. A woman was tied to the ironwood tree with restraints that looked like advanced polymer bindings. She was unconscious and her head was bleeding. She wore a flight suit that Daniel did not recognize with patches and insignia he had never seen before. Her equipment looked decades more advanced than anything from his colony. Daniel stood there staring at her, unable to process what he was seeing. This was impossible. Everything about this was impossible. But she was real. He could see her breathing. He could see blood running down her face. After 20 years of being alone, Daniel Hayes had found another human being. But something was very wrong because people did not just appear tied to trees on abandoned planets. Someone had put her here. Someone had hurt her, and that someone might still be watching.